I want to announce Vetted's brand new merch line. Our Believe hat that you can see right here. Looking good. Our Believe t-shirt. This thing is awesome, I promise you. Go to vettedmerch.store. Check it out. Let me know what you think. What's up, Vetters? Today we're talking about this.
If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help. We can join with. Together, we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there.
You were asked, you said in your interview on Liberation Times, you talked about NIHI on the moon. They asked you about it, and you just answered yes.
There's also photographs that I don't believe have been made public yet that show on the lunar surface what appear to be large monolithic structures with right-angle cuts that appear to be on the lunar surface. And I believe those photographs, if they have not been released yet, may be released soon. But they are certainly very intriguing looking at these objects from space.
All right, Vetters, please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. All right, Vetters, I am back from vacation feeling energized and refreshed and ready to get back to making videos just like this one today. Because today we're talking about Lue Elizondo and some comments he made on a live broadcast out in Japan. Well, he wasn't in Japan, but the broadcast was in Japan. And he brought up something that is quite unusual. Apparently a monolith on the moon and pictures of it that will be released soon. And actually, he's not even sure if maybe the pictures have already been released. What? So let's get into this moon monolith. You see, the reason that Lue Elizondo brought up the moon monolith and the pictures that are eventually coming out about it is because he was asked about some comments he made in a recent Liberation Times interview where he said that there was NHI on the moon. That's right, non-human intelligence, aliens on the moon.
You were asked, you said in your interview on Liberation Times, you talked about NIHI on the moon. They asked you about it, and you just answered yes.
And Lue Elizondo basically goes on to describe some of the photos that were released in the first tranche of UFO files from the Trump administration, where some images were shown from the moon. Back in these Apollo missions where you could see some dots, and there were some interesting things there for sure. But more importantly, this interview with Liberation Times, right? Here's Ross Coulthart talking about it shortly after the interview went public.
Since we last did our Q&As, Lue Elizondo gave a great interview to the Liberation Times' Christopher Sharp on the 3rd of June. And he started talking about how there are claims about the moon relating to classified sources of information that he's unable to comment on. He's a terrible tease, Mr. Elizondo. Asked whether he has any knowledge, directly or indirectly, of non-human intelligence being on the moon. I was really shocked to hear Lue's response. He answered with one word: yes. He is aware, directly or indirectly, of non-human intelligence being on the moon. He was asked to comment, and he said, quote, "There are certain classified sources of information that I am unable to elaborate that indicate that the moon is or was perhaps of particular interest by something or someone else other than us."
So, of course, Lue Elizondo gives a mysterious answer about classified stuff and maybe perhaps, aliens were interested or are interested in the moon, right? Again, no real answers, just the bombshell comment. Again, the whole reason I use bombshell, right, on vetted, right? Another example of something that would absolutely be a real bombshell if true, right? And this stuff just drops like nothing in this community, right? And so he says that, right? But no clarification, and we're just all supposed to ooh and ah over this claim from Lue Elizondo. And then right after that, he does this Japanese sort of live stream, right? And then he drops this little bombshell.
There's also photographs that I don't believe have been made public yet that show on the lunar surface what appear to be large monolithic structures with right angle cuts that appear to be on the lunar surface. And I believe those photographs, if they have not been released yet, may be released soon. But they are certainly very intriguing looking at these objects from space.
I think really the craziest part of this is him saying, I think the photos may have already been released. I'm not sure, but or they're going to be released, right? Like, you don't know if they've been released? Wouldn't everybody be talking about this if it was so important? Right? This is a live stream. This is something that was recorded before. So what's he talking about? Right? That maybe it was recorded before and just put out as a stream. I don't know. But either way, the fact that he doesn't know if these pictures have been released already, it just goes to show that the pictures are nothing, right? They're kind of probably bullshit and not the bombshell that he's trying to make it out to be with these 90-degree angles of this monolith on the moon of this photos. And where did this come from all of a sudden? Is this what he was referring to before from this classified stuff and now he can talk about it? Again, just so crazy, right? To bring this up. And yeah, do I want to see the pictures? Well, of course. They might have already been released. Again, that is a huge red flag that he's not even sure if the pictures have been released or not. Ask yourself if that makes any sense whatsoever. Now, monoliths, right? You may be thinking, what is that? What is a monolith on the moon, right? Well, we first saw monoliths in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Remember this, especially at the beginning of the movie where the apes are running around and this alien monolith is there, right? Basically just this obelisk, right? Is how it's described. And then they're on the moon and they do see another monolith, another obelisk, right? And this is kind of what Lue Elizondo is talking about, I guess. I mean, just so much of this stuff is, seated in fictional science fiction storytelling. Now, many people would argue that, oh, well, that's why it's true because they're taking from real and putting it into science fiction, or not, or it's the other way around as well, right? Which is a complete possibility that people just take this stuff from science fiction, bring it into the real world, and now you're supposed to do something about it, right? And the monoliths are interesting, to say the least. I mean, this is what monoliths are considered sort of in storytelling from Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote the book that Stanley Kubrick made 2001: A Space Odyssey off of, and this is what it says. The concept of an alien monolith on the moon largely stems from the sci-fi franchise 2001: A Space Odyssey. In both Arthur C. Clarke's novel and Stanley Kubrick's film, a mysterious black rectangular obelisk is found buried in the lunar soil. In the storyline, the monolith serves as a, quote, tripwire or signal beacon left by an ancient unseen alien species called the Firstborn. It remained dormant for millions of years until it was excavated by human astronauts. Once it was struck by sunlight, it emitted a piercing, high-frequency radio signal toward Jupiter to alert the aliens that humanity had achieved space travel. So that's the lore, right, from 2001 and where most people know monoliths from. Now, there is sort of an interesting story of another monolith that was, quote, spotted on a moon of Mars. It was called the Phobos monolith. I think I'm saying that right. And here is astronaut Buzz Aldrin bringing it up back in the 90s on a newscast.
If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help. We can join with. Together, we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there.
Now, he seemed very excited by that and wanted to know who made it. Well, you know, after that came out, more people found out about it, and it was discovered to be just a boulder. Now, still people will argue, no, it's not a boulder. All right, maybe it's not, but it's pretty much what it's been identified by. So I guess you don't have to believe that. But I've seen no other evidence that it's some alien, quote, tripwire or beacon or something left by an ancient civilization, right? Aliens. Again, where's the evidence? This is all just so weird. Do I want something like this to be real? Yeah, that would be cool. Is there any evidence leaning towards this monolith that Lue Elizondo is talking about on the moon? No, there isn't, right? And again, if these pictures were already out, I mean, Lue Elizondo doesn't even know. If they were out, we'd be talking about them. So the fact that he just doesn't know that just means they're probably going to be weak sauce, y'all. I mean, hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there's something better about it. Now, from this Japanese stream, Lue Elizondo also said some other interesting things. Let's take a look at a couple more clips. He said this, dropped this little story that was interesting.
On a more humorous note, there was a report that was also released at that time of a senior intelligence official who was sent by helicopter to investigate several UAP sightings. He was a skeptic. And then while he was in the helicopter for 20 minutes, he and the pilot were pursued by these orbs. And when he finally got back to his intelligence agency, he was panicked and was insistent that this experience was absolutely real. And I suspect it may have changed his mind a little.
I love how he starts that clip by saying, oh, here's a humorous story for you. What you're telling me, an intelligence officer was in a helicopter chased by alien little orb, sentient plasmoid beings or spacecraft, got scared, and this is funny. Again, it just, for me personally, I hear that and go, this is bullshit. There's nothing. There's no alien spacecraft chasing this helicopter. Who knows what the hell happened? But you don't get any details. You don't know anything. And it's just this humorous tale. Now, during this live stream, Lue Elizondo was asked some questions about Trump. And actually, I don't think anyone has noticed Lue Elizondo's answers being very interesting. Right? No one's talking about this, but I caught it. So let's take a look at clip number 1.
So you have indicated that President Trump has been briefed on the UAP issue. But is it possible that he has not been read into the level that you or David Grush has been to? And if you had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, how far into the full picture do you think President Trump actually is?
Well, I'm confident he has not been briefed to the level that my colleagues and I were involved with. But I don't think it's necessarily deliberate. I think any president of any nation is extremely busy. They have multiple national priorities that they have to balance, and they do not have the luxury of committing time nor energy to a single topic. However, I am aware that the president was indeed briefed to a level necessary enough for him to start directing organizations and agencies to be more forthcoming with the American people. I am confident he is very well aware of the reality of this topic.
Again, you know, the president's been briefed. So what? He gets told things all the time. It doesn't mean he takes it seriously. And that's really what people want to know. Not what Trump was told, but how did Trump take it? And was he serious about it? And he's not really that serious about it. Anyone with two working eyeballs can see that, can see the tranche of information that we've got from the UFO files. And we'll get to that in a second, because Lue Elizondo's interpretation of that is mind-boggling. But regardless, you know, the president hasn't been briefed like me and my colleagues have, right? We've got all the secret information that the president, the most powerful person in the world, just doesn't have. Now, he's got other things to worry about. But I thought this was the most important thing. Wouldn't he put this above everything if it is as you say, right? That's because there isn't really much of anything. They're just telling Trump there's some things flying around, but it's nothing really to be worried about, right? That's the problem, right? Lue Elizondo and his colleagues don't have shit, right? Otherwise, the president, Trump, would be doing something about it, and he's not. He's sort of delegated to a few people to put out a few different things to appease people that are interested in UFOs, and that's how Trump sees it. Trump's not one to hide his opinion. You see, this might work with other presidents, meaning the public might believe this from other presidents, that they'd have a poker face and they'd be hiding it. But everyone knows that Trump doesn't have a poker face, and he pretty much says how he feels. Not pretty much, he does. He says how he feels all the time. He's got the biggest mouth of any president. He just talks. He just speaks. He's not afraid. And most of the time, that would probably be a bad thing. But in this case, it's a good thing, in the sense that we really get to know how Trump feels about this. They can try to paint it any way they want, but Trump is not interested in this. And he was briefed, whatever that means, right? Again, no information. And this gets eaten up by people, but, you know, and they kind of push back on this a little bit in this Japanese stream, to be honest with you, right? Which I appreciated. Because they can see clearly that Trump really isn't doing anything to set up for some sort of, quote, disclosure to the people. And I think that's a great point that they bring up.
So releasing footage is one thing, but if the United States was to formally acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial life, or NHI, the impact on the economy and on energy policy would be unavoidable, which means the White House would need a carefully prepared framework to manage such an announcement. From where we sit in Japan, it doesn't look like that kind of structure is being built. How do you see it?
Well, I respectfully will differ slightly on that perspective. I believe that the administration is taking a very measured approach. I think it's very prudent, because the president has said, for the record, he said, "I'm releasing the files, and I want the American people to decide for themselves what this means to them, and more importantly, I hope they make the right decision." So the president, without causing any type of disruption to the markets or anything like that, has so far executed this disclosure, I think, in a very thoughtful way. It may not be the way that most people want or expect or anticipate, but let's face the facts. that right now nobody has, this has not destabilized any markets. It has not challenged any real religions. People are still going about their daily business and paying their taxes and paying their bills and taking care of their children.
And this is hilarious. Lue Elizondo is basically selling it like, oh no, they are, Trump putting out these files and stuff is soft disclosure. It's disclosure for people. He's just doing it in a smart way to keep people working and doing their thing so they don't lose their shit. What? You think those files were disclosure? I mean, this is insane. This is mind-boggling for me. This is a bombshell, if you ask me, that Lue Elizondo is so delusional that he thinks that this is some sort of disclosure. This is what he's been telling people is coming for so long. Those files, right? And the Trump's doing it smartly, right? To not scare anybody, to avoid financial collapse. Let's show them bullshit. What? I mean, this is stupid. I'm totally was confused by this when I heard this from Lue Elizondo. I was not expecting that. I mean, talk about polishing a turd. I mean, they're just reaching for straws here at this point. But because Lue Elizondo and his colleagues and people like him have been making promises for a long time. And there's always fireworks are coming, something's coming, things are happening, things are going. And then nothing happens, right? Not for anyone really paying attention. Again, this works for some clicks and some views on Twitter and YouTube, but it doesn't actually move the scientific conversation forward in any way, shape, or form, right? And politically, people can get behind some things, but they're not really doing anything, right? There's been very little movement when you consider the entire landscape and what's been promised, right? They claim all these people have been briefed and all these people have testified behind the scenes, but there's no movement because there's no evidence ever provided, right? Otherwise, people would be moving on it. Or if there is evidence provided, it's clearly not good evidence, right? It's just ambiguous enough to be able to dismiss. But I got to be honest, I was totally baffled by Lue Elizondo saying that this, tranche of files that have been released is sort of Trump disclosing to the American public. What? Let me know what you think in the comments. Did I hear that right? Because pretty sure that's exactly what he said. Now, Lue Elizondo's also been in the news recently. You see, I've been on vacation, so I've got a lot of catching up to do. And I've been saving all these clips of Lue Elizondo, and he went with Tim Burchett on Fox News show and also brought up something that at first people were talking about, oh my God, what did Lue Elizondo just say? But there's a huge red flag, and I'll explain after the clip.
When the scientists are looking, they're saying, hey, we've got material here that was allegedly recovered from a crash back in the late 1940s, and we know for sure that the provenance at a minimum was from the late 1980s, early 1990s, meaning we've had that material in our possession at least from that time. And a major aerospace contractor for the U.S. government only 4 years ago successfully was able to try to replicate a little bit of that at a macro level, and it destroyed the machine out of a cost of $1 million. And they tell you, if you wanted us to make this, it would cost billions and billions. You can't afford us to make something like this. Then you have to start asking the hard questions. Okay, if it's not our material, and by the way, I briefed when I was in the Pentagon, seniors at the Pentagon on this very material. And they said, well, Lou, is it Russian? Is it Chinese? So, well, if it is, we got bigger problems on our hands because this material, we still can't replicate it today. So that's about as far as I can go with what your question is.
Oh, Lou, again, that's as far as I can go with what your question is. So let me tell you what the red flag is here. He's saying there's this material that was recovered and a group tried to work on it. It broke a machine, right? Cost of $1 million, which is nothing today, nowadays. This is a lot to me and you, but in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. And it would cost billions to replicate. The fact that it could be replicated at all by us is a huge red flag. You're telling me we have this advanced alien technology and we can replicate it for billions? That's cheap. That's cheap. We can replicate alien technology. If they thought it was alien, they'd be like, yes, let's replicate this. They'd figure out a quicker way to do it. You don't think Elon Musk would figure out a way? You don't think the smartest people in the world would figure out a way? That just tells me that it's not alien at all, right? But he's trying to sell it like it is. And then he's saying he briefed some Congress members on it or whatever. And, hey, Lou, is this Chinese or Russian? Oh, we got bigger problems if it is. Really? Wouldn't the biggest problem be that it's alien? Again, these are stupid answers. I'm sorry. But this is meant to obfuscate, to use a UFO term, right? This is just meant to confuse. This isn't alien at all, in my opinion. And those are huge red flags, if you ask me. Again, if we dropped a Harley Davidson with a full gas tank in, the Roman era 2,000 years ago or plus or whatever, go back as far as you want, just 200 years ago, they wouldn't be able to replicate any of it because they wouldn't have any of the technology to do it, right? But somehow we can replicate some of this super advanced alien technology at the cost of billions. Again, we wouldn't be able to replicate any of it. So this is a huge red flag. Now, if you remember, I did put out a video while I was on vacation, and it did have to do with Lue Elizondo, and specifically some comments that Ross Coulthart made about Lue Elizondo being in the, quote, UFO legacy program. Remember this?
It's pretty obvious, I'm not going to lie to you, that the gentleman that I've been talking about, whom I suspect might be up for a big position, is Lue Elizondo. And I've spoken to people in the legacy program who knew Lue. Lue, I know a lot of people, and they know you. And I know you can't speak about the role that you've held within the legacy program, but you did. And I think we've got to stop this nonsense because it's becoming destructive. There are factions and bitternesses beginning to develop within the UAP world, and I think it's in danger of blowing the whole thing apart because divide and rule is the moral of those, the gatekeepers that would seek to put this all back into a box for another 50 years. And that is their intent. Hopefully one day it will be where they are pulling the fingernails out of the members of the legacy program and extracting the truth of the crash retrieval reverse engineering program that we all know does exist and is quietly hidden in the countryside somewhere in rural Virginia, not far from this studio.
And the funny part is that you have Ross saying Lue is in the UFO legacy program. He respects them. He likes them. And then also in that same video later on, or even earlier, I can't really remember what order, Ross Coulthart's like, we need to take these people from the UFO legacy program and pull their thumbnails out and their nails out and get information out of them. And then he's accusing Lue Elizondo of being in the legacy program. Right? Just think about that. Ross Coulthart's saying he wants us to take Lue Elizondo's nails out. Right? But at the same time, he's saying he respects them. I mean, what? Right? This was so crazy when this came out, which is why I made a video of it while I was on vacation. One, define UFO legacy program. It's never defined. They just love using that term. Absolute nonsense. Right? Well, Lue Elizondo actually went out and responded to Ross Coulthart. And then Ross Coulthart responded to Lue Elizondo responding. So first, let's take a look at Lue Elizondo responding to Ross Coulthart's original allegation that he was in the UFO legacy program.
Well, look, I think Ross is an excellent investigative journalist. Personally, I like him. I think he's done tremendous work for disclosure and where we are today in the conversation. I find it interesting that just weeks ago, according to some on social media, I had nothing to do with the UFO program or the Pentagon or ATIP. And now, apparently, I ran everything involving UFOs and the legacy program. So I don't know exactly where Ross is getting his information. I suspect he has sources. Really, that's not really my concern. I've always had a lot of respect for Ross. For me, any chance I get to talk about disclosure and transparency, look, I've dedicated the last 10 years of my life being forthcoming with the American people about the reality of UAP, UFOs. In fact, one only has to look at my resignation memo for the record that I wrote to Secretary Mattis, James Mattis at the time. I've committed myself to transparency to the degree that I could. It is true that I have security clearance.
That's the space, Lou, right? Because up till that point, I think Ross would agree with everything you just said until right here. But you were in the legacy program. You've never really talked about it. Is that because you can't? And if you can't, do you think it's fair of Ross to say, well, then you still should?
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't say I was part of the legacy program. And let me make this clear too, Chris, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. When you work for the government and you have a security clearance, there's always these statements, we cannot confirm or deny. And people always take that as some sort of implicit yes. But the reality is that's not at all what that means. There are classified programs out there. And if someone were to ask me, Lou, were you part of, Project X with the M1 Abrams tank? Even if I wasn't, if it's a classified program, I would have to say I can't discuss that. In fact, I can't even acknowledge that. And for those of you in your audience that have security clearances, they will relate to that tremendously. And so I think it's important. A lot of times people infer things, especially in the world of social media and where, people like yourself, you might say something that gets taken out of context, or I say something that's getting taken out of context, and all of a sudden it kind of grows legs, if you will, and starts to take on its own life. The truth of the fact is that I've always been very clear. I worked in a program called ATIP. I have committed myself for the last 10 years of my life for truth and transparency to the American public. And at the same time, me being on this program where we're talking about me, Lue Elizondo, instead of disclosure, and I have an opportunity to use this in order to raise awareness about the reality that our government has been involved in this topic for decades, then that's a small price to pay. I'm willing to do that. And by the way, again, for the record, I think Ross is an excellent investigative journalist.
No, I get it. I get it. You're not trashing Ross.
And of course, my producer, Mac, doesn't really care about any of this. Yeah, he's sleeping. He just doesn't care because it's bullshit, right? Luis Elizondo responding is absolutely hilarious. This is one point where I believe him. Yeah, you were not in the UFO, quote, legacy program. Again, it's never defined, right? And it's meant to be this secret program within the U.S. government that's been hiding all of this alien technology. And you're telling me that the guy who shows irrigation circles and reflections in windows and talks about monoliths and not even sure if the pictures have been released yet or not is the guy, right? This bumbling fool is in the UFO legacy program, right? I just don't buy it. One, again, the UFO, quote, legacy program is never defined, right? So you just don't even know what they're talking about. You hear it and you fill in the gaps in your head and go, oh yeah, the UFO legacy program. But have you ever asked anybody what the hell that even means? So you can really try to address that and really try to understand what that means, right? So Luis Elizondo comes out and responds to Ross, right? Oh, Ross decides to respond back to Luis Elizondo. This is what he said.
There has been a lot of media attention and social media attention to comments that you made about Lue Elizondo during our Q&A last week. Ross, I'd like to get your take on what we're seeing from Lue's response.
Okay, so let me just say off the top, I was quite surprised to see, even on my own network, that it had been misreported that Lue had said that what I was saying about his past involvement in the legacy program was wrong. I don't think that's anyone's takeaway at all from what Lue Elizondo said. What I saw was Lue very deftly avoiding any breach of his National Security Act oath obligations and basically refusing to confirm or deny whether or not he was a part of the legacy program. He's maintained the truth of the fact is I've always been very clear. I worked in a program called ATIP, and he does say I've committed myself to transparency to the degree that I could, and I respect and understand the constraints that Lue is under. He's in a very difficult position, and I certainly don't want people to think that I'm trying to hijack him with this stuff. What I do think, and what I said on the Q&A that we did on the weekend, was that I do think there needs to come a time when Lue can be more forthcoming about what his past role was, including his past role with the legacy UAP retrieval reverse engineering program in a counterintelligence role. Lue did actually at one stage say to Chris Cuomo in one interview that when you have a security clearance, there's always these statements, we cannot confirm or deny. And people always take that as some kind of implicit yes, but the reality is that's not at all what that means. Even if it's a classified program, I would have to say I can't discuss that. I can't even acknowledge that. So he doesn't say I wasn't in the legacy program, but he also doesn't say he was in it, which is the classic intelligence community rejoinder to when naughty people like me put good men like Lue Elizondo on the spot. It's a difficult spot for him. What Lue did say, and I think this has been misreported, is that he said to Chris Cuomo, I've never said I was in the legacy program. And that's completely true. Lue has never made any public admission that he was in the legacy program. But what he didn't do in either his comments to Cuomo or in any public comments anywhere on social media or anywhere in any public space is respond to the specific allegation that he was involved in the legacy UAP retrieval reverse engineering program. It's a difficult situation for Lue, and I deeply admire and respect the fact that he's very much pro-transparency and pro-disclosure.
I mean, basically, Ross is just saying that Lue didn't, confirm or deny, so therefore he's confirming it. Again, just nonsense to me. All of it, just a weird little thing. They're trying to, get Luis Elizondo to come out and say things he's clearly not going to say. So it almost seems like it's just to diminish his reputation. And they're basically calling him a liar, right? Ross Coulthard and other people in the UFO community have come out to say this about Luis Elizondo. They're basically saying he's been lying for the last 10 years, hasn't been honest with anybody, yet we're still supposed to believe him. Right. And he's been a counterintel agent this entire time, disinformation, to hide a real alien program. Right. I just don't believe any of it. God, this kind of stuff just makes me not believe in any of it. No reverse engineering program, no secret alien program, none of it. Craft bodies, none of it. Right. Now, it doesn't mean I don't believe in the phenomena. Right. Those are two separate things. But in my opinion, this whole house of cards is falling fast. And again, just so funny that Ross is like, I respect Lue and he's the guy and he's doing it for national security. But at the same time, he's saying he's in the UFO legacy program. That's what his sources are telling him. That's what Ross's sources, his super secret sources are telling Ross. Why doesn't Ross have any super secret sources in Australia? Right, that are telling him stuff about Australia. Why is it American super secret sources are telling Ross everything, right? And revealing all the information inside the most secretive U.S. government program to ever exist. More secretive than the Manhattan Project. They're telling Ross Coulthard, a News Nation journalist. Tell me that makes any sense, right? But Ross, again, he thinks we should be pulling out the fingernails of UFO legacy program members to get information from them. He's accusing Lue Elizondo of being one of these people, but saying he still respects him. Again, none of it makes sense, if you ask me. So anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to check out Vetted's brand new merch. Go to vettedmerch.store. Sales have been great. I really want to appreciate and thank everyone who has supported and bought some merch. I really appreciate it. I hope you like it. Anyway, thank you for the support. And if you're still interested in the film, Psionics is still out. Go to psionics.film to watch the movie. We actually just won some awards at some film festivals, so we'll be posting that on our website. Really excited about that. and we've got some plans coming up for the next documentary that we're shooting, and I'll be announcing a streaming date very soon for the movie. So anyway, thank you guys for supporting. We'll see you guys on the next one. I got another video coming out tomorrow, and we're back, baby. All right, we'll see you on the next one. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.